समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Just when you thought things between United States and India could not get any worse, comes yet more intemperate language from one of the top advisors to Donald Trump. Peter Navarro has used extraordinarily insulting and unhinged language for India, including calling India a laundromat for the Kremlin and the Maharaja of tariffs. Amid these worsening, nosediving state of affairs between Washington and New Delhi, comes the twist in the tale. China's envoy to India says China stands firmly with India against bullies, in this context, Donald Trump. But given China's role in Operation Sindoor, can China really be trusted? This is the Hobson's choice for India today. How might the Modi government respond next? I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, an unhinged attack from Peter Navarro, following up on his op-ed in the Financial Times, now taking a Maharaja swipe at India, calling it the king of tariffs, but also calling India a laundromat for the Kremlin, arguing that India does not need Russian oil and repeating the allegation that India is fueling the war machine in Ukraine. This despite the fact that the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has conceded to Fox News that Trump and his administration now take a 10% markup on all weapons that are being sold to European nations, who are in turn delivering them to Ukraine and Ukraine's armed forces. So while it's America that's really profiteering from the Ukraine war, the unhinged attacks on India continue day after day. And amidst this worsening equation comes China's very unequivocal support, at least on this one issue. China's envoy to India said that China stands firmly with India and silence is not a way to take on bullies. Chinese foreign minister has just wrapped up his visit in India, but now he's in Pakistan. And the same envoy to India also described Pakistan to be a victim of terrorism. So really no clear answers, no clear path ahead in this jumbled up geopolitical landscape. Let me introduce our guests on the program today as we try and make sense of it all. It is mind-boggling. Military veteran Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha is with us. Good to see you, sir. Good evening. Joining us is Suhasini Haidar, who is, of course, the diplomatic editor at The Hindu. Always great to have you with us. And also joining us is veteran diplomat, Ambassador Dilip Sinha. I think for anybody who may have missed it, it is important to hear what Peter Navarro had to say in the last few hours. The language is truly intemperate. He is a top trade advisor to Trump. So what he's saying cannot be ignored. He's probably directly influencing how Trump thinks about India. He's called India a laundromat for the Kremlin. This is a slightly longer statement, but I think it's worth the listen. Let's take a look.
Higher tariffs, there are Maharaja tariffs, higher non-tariff barriers. We run a massive trade deficit with them. So that hurts American workers, hurts American businesses. Then they use the money that they get from us when they sell us stuff to buy Russian oil, which then is processed by refiners and they make a bunch of money there. But then the Russians use the money to build more arms and kill Ukrainians. And so American taxpayers have to provide more aid, military style, to the Ukrainians. So that's insane. And President Trump sees that chessboard beautifully. And you guys need to write about that. That's what's going on there. India doesn't appear to want to recognize its role in the bloodshed It simply doesn't. It's cozying up to Xi Jinping. Is what it's doing. It's not act. And by the way, I wrote that article in the FT just to deal with the propaganda of the Indian government to make people want to feel sorry for them. Oh, they need the oil. They don't need the oil. It's a refining profiteering scheme. It's a laundromat for the Kremlin. That's the reality of that. So I love India. Look, Modi's a great leader, but please, India, like look at what your role here is in the global economy and good here. It's like what you're doing right now is not creating peace, it's perpetuating the war.
So absolutely intemperate language there. Ambassador Dilip Sinha, I'll start with you. Peter Navarro has gone much further than even his op-ed in the Financial Times did. He's a key advisor to Trump. He's making a kind of Orientalist swipe by using the word Maharaja. He's calling India a laundromat for the Kremlin. I'm not saying that India has to respond tit for tat to every slur, but clearly nothing is getting better between India and the United States of America. It seems to be nosediving, more and more. How do you read these latest comments against India?
Well, unfortunately, what you're saying is correct, Barkha. Things are not going too well right now. With people like Peter Navarro over there, we know his background and what he did by creating a pseudonym writer called Van Rowe and then quoting him to establish himself as a leading economist. So we know his background, and I don't think we should take him too seriously. Certainly, government should not start responding to him now. Things are very, very, very volatile right now internationally. You have Trump, who met Putin just the other day, now advising Ukraine that he cannot win the war unless they attack Russia. Russia has just bombed an American factory in Ukraine. We have had China is in talks with Boeing to buy 500 aircraft. These are all reports of today. So people are moving around with almost like pirouetting on a dance floor. So in this, I don't think we should tie ourselves down to any particular move and say we are going to do only this and nothing more than that. With China, we have had just 2 meetings, the NSA and the EAM, and we have had differences showing up over the readouts of the 2 countries on the talks that took place. These are all serious matters. So there are differences that we have with all these countries. We have to play coolly and ensure that we don't muddy the waters any further than what people like Peter Navarro are already doing.
So what are you advising? A Michelle Obama-esque, when they go low, we go high. Do we just be silent? I mean, what is the precise way to not muddy the waters further, Ambassador Sinha?
Well, as somebody said, that when you are in deep water, keep your mouth shut. And that's a good advice to follow. We have to keep our relationship with the US going. China is not exactly our best friend, but there's no harm in talking to China. Russia has been a steady friend, but relations with Russia can only go so far, given the fact that Putin has antagonized the entire Western world. So if we improve relations with Russia, it's not only America that we are antagonizing Europe as well. And that's not necessarily a good thing. And then at least in Russia, we have had the courage to go and tell them to reduce the trade deficit. We must remember that if our market in America goes down, then we will not have the dollars to pay for the oil. And of course, what Peter Navarro is saying is absolute nonsense, because the oil that that Ambanis were refining were being exported to the Western countries. They were exported to Europe. Didn't they know where the oil was coming from? And as EM himself said, that America itself has advised us to buy oil from Russia. Now, EM obviously must be telling the truth. It must have been an informal advice coming in.
No. There's actually Eric Garcetti on record, the former American ambassador to India, saying this at a public event. By the way, Ambassador.
Yes, that answers your question. So everybody knew about this. Everybody knew that if Russia was faced sanctions, then oil prices would shoot up, and that would be very bad for Europe. As it is, Europe went through a very bad winter. Anybody who has lived in Europe knew that heating bills had shot up, and things could be kept in control only thanks to the oil that India was refining, and we were doing the dirty work of refining the oil. That is, our emissions and our pollution levels were going up. So it's not as if we were only gaining money; we were also paying the price in terms of our environmental cost.
Yeah. Ambassador, I beg your pardon, Admiral Sinha, picking up on what Ambassador Sinha says, that, this is perhaps a moment to keep your head down, hunker down, and assess and not react immediately. But from a security perspective, there are an immediate set of concerns. China's attitude is quite hard to read. China has just actively helped Pakistan in Operation Sindoor. China is professing to stand completely in India's corner on tariffs, but Wang Yi has gone from India to Pakistan. There has been a trilateral between China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And the same Chinese ambassador offering full support to India is also talking about Pakistan being a victim of terrorism. I don't see a lot of great choices with China, despite the pain points with the United States. How do you see it, Admiral?
Well, Barkha, before I move to that issue, let me just add to what Dilip has said. It's a visible signs of decline of the Anglo-Saxon white superiority in the world, and I think it will happen further. It will get worsened. Yeah. This is just the reaction of the losing the supremacy, and I think you got to read the life of Peter Navarro. He has had a very unhappy childhood. And equally unhappy sort of adulthood, and he is known as eccentric guy even by the Republicans. So I will leave it at that. And what Dilip is saying is absolutely right. We have to act very dignified and a proper diplomatic manner. If there is some replies to go, let the MEA think about it. We should not be making anything worse. Coming to your question that you asked me, Barkha, yes, it's certainly a concern because technology is what we needed, and we required some more technology. But let me also tell you that there are countries who are willing to give you technology. Let me begin with the jet engine for the AMCA. The Americans were willing to give you 414 manufacturing here in India, and I think that might stop now. And they said, sorry, we will not be able to give you 100% technology. They will keep that last 10-15%, and that is what is important for us. The rest of it we know. But very quickly, Safran has already tied up with the Indian agencies. They are already in the process of developing an engine where 100% technology transfer. Rolls-Royce is already on the verge of signing a contract. And I think there'll be 2 factories here where the jet engines will be, ultimately it will be made by India. This technology we have lost out, not because of any fault, because during the Industrial Revolution, there was some technology which we were not made privy to. And we were a colony, and the Britishers never gave it to us. So I think. But
Admiral, beyond technology transfer, beyond high-end technology transfer, I'm simply talking about navigating this equation with China. Literally weeks after Operation Sindoor or months after Operation Sindoor, how do we proceed? It is such a delicate walk at this moment.
Absolutely, it's a very delicate walk. Which is visible in the the number of sectors which have been created in the northern border and eastern border. From 1 it is 10 talking teams. So obviously we know that not very little is going to come out of it in at least in near future. I would say that we have to be very careful in how much to what extent do we engage with China. Engage we must, because that old dictum of enemy's friend is your enemy, that doesn't work anymore in the new world. So I think that we will have to talk to them, and I'm sure this government is quite capable of navigating that very tight row, and they will probably engage China only to the limit where it does not impact our critical infrastructure. And you're right, there's much more than what we have seen in Op Sindhu behind the scene, what has happened, and India is very much preparing for that. Coming back to Russia has been our solid partner for decades, and they will continue to do so. And in a day or two, you will find that some more systems which we can rely on, not the Chinese ones. And it will be negotiated very quickly. And I think the Americans are, as I said, the downward travel has begun. Barkha.
Okay, thanks for that. Let me bring in Suhasini now. Suhasini, in one of your recent op-eds and analysis of the Alaska summit, couple of the arguments that you made were that if India were looking towards that summit to look for possible relief in the tariffs, that not just did not happen, but that was perhaps a misplaced expectation. And one of the arguments you make is that even if things get better between Trump and Moscow, that doesn't necessarily lead to a thaw with India, because this is not about Russian oil, it's about power games. That's what you write. And the second argument that you make is the perils of symmetry driving diplomacy, because then when there is a problem, the top leaderships or the top leaders can't fix it because there might be a problem right at the very top. So I want you to come in on everything that has happened, the contradictions in America's response, the lack of great options for India at this point. Go ahead.
Sure. Barkha, you started with that quote from Peter Navarro, and I do want to make the point that there's no point looking for consistency in what the US is saying, because the US has flip-flopped so many times on what it wants India to do vis-a-vis Russia. It cannot even keep up with the number of times at the beginning of the war when they said stop all trade with Russia, stop all talks with Russia, to about a year later when they said, okay, if you're going to buy oil from Russia, then do it below a price cap. After which they said, actually, we want you to buy oil from Russia because you're then freeing up Saudi oil and other oil for Europe. So it's gone through many phases. And Mr. Trump, when he came to power, certainly did not want to put any pressure on India when it came to Russia. In recent weeks, he's actually talking to Russia, increasing trade with Russia, while penalizing India for trade with Russia. They are completely ignoring China's intake of Russian oil, saying that's complicated. We've got a conversation going with them of a different sort. What are we basically having to come to terms with here, Barkha? And that is that the US has a problem with India. And I would say there is some personal aspect to it. So Mr. Trump has a problem with Mr. Modi. Therefore, what we're not actually looking at, while we have this discussion about whether America is right to say this or not right to say this, we are not looking at where does the problem actually lie. And I'm sorry, I completely disagree with Ambassador Sinha. This is not the time to keep quiet. I think too much of our government right now has run its foreign policy with the idea that they don't need to speak about what's happened. When Prime Minister Modi, and you're showing those pictures, when Prime Minister Modi goes into this room with Mr. Trump and comes away with the expectation, or certainly the public expectation given, that they're on the best of terms, that they have an understanding that few leaders in the world have, and that on trade, India is actually ahead of everybody else on the curve, the government needs to explain where it went off the rails. Why is this relationship between Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi right now so fractious that the two men aren't even picking up a telephone to discuss the trade issues, let alone all the other issues and all the other comments made by Mr. Trump? Why are we not being told exactly what happened? Whether it is over the trade issues, where the trade issues fell. We only have that one statement from Prime Minister Modi saying, I'm willing to forego my personal reputation if it comes to saving India's farmers and fishermen and dairy workers. But we don't know more than that. Is the US bullying India on the subject of market access on agricultural issues? If so, what is India saying? What is India's red line? And if there was that red line, was that red line actually conveyed to the Americans first up when Prime Minister Modi met Mr. Trump and said, I'm sorry, this is not something I'm going to discuss? Or is this a case of mismatched expectations? So while I really cannot even begin to unpack the kind of inconsistencies we're seeing from the Trump administration on a daily tantrum, the comments they are making, I mean, after a while, it becomes difficult to parse them. But I do think that we need to have some expectation from the government that if a massive foreign policy pillar of the kind built up, particularly in the last decade by the government, of this US being its most dependable strategic partner, if that pillar looks like it's got cracks in it, we do need to understand why that's happened. We
can I ask you a question, though, before Ambassador Sinha responds, because you disagreed with him? Sorry.
Is that we can't just keep saying we're the victims here.
Okay. My follow-up is this. You said clearly what's not being said, or it's being said in certain quarters, but it's not being said all the time, is that America has a problem with India and President Trump seems to have a problem with Prime Minister Modi. Now, the point is, we don't know whether, and you write about this in your column, did something go down in a very acrimonious phone call between the two leaders? Is this about Operation Sindoor? Is this about Mr. Modi not meeting with Trump when Trump was still campaigning? We actually don't know what this personal problem is and why it has suddenly emerged. But if it is a personal problem, how does the government explain that publicly? Because it may not know for sure what the problem is.
Well, I think to begin with, Barkha, and I'll just quickly summarize what I said in the column. One, we need to do a little less of this symmetry. I've said it on your show before. We need to have processes between the two governments. We cannot have Prime Minister Modi meeting President Xi Jinping 18 times one-on-one, and then Galwan happens, and none of us know actually what was the discussion between the two sides when it came to the boundary. Similarly, we can't have this kind of situation where Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi are announcing deals all the time when they come together, but we don't know what the back end of that is. The second, that we need a certain level of bipartisanship. Is some of the peak Mr. Trump feeling right now because he was very clearly ignored by the government when he was out of power? Has India now stopped dealing with both sides of the political fence when it goes to other democracies? I certainly know when foreign leaders come to India, they are not encouraged by the MEA to meet leaders on both sides of the political fence, and we've started doing a little less of that. We've learned from Bangladesh, from Nepal, from Sri Lanka, from Maldives on that issue. We need to learn that lesson with the US as well. And I think the third, Barkha, when you ask that question about what India should do, is there must be a level of real consistency. And by that, I mean, when we talk about principles, for example, right now we have everyone saying India does not bow to American diktats. But do we not know that just a few years ago, when Mr. Trump sent Nikki Haley here to bully us into stopping oil from Iran and Venezuela, the government actually did cave. The government did actually stop all oil from Iran and Venezuela. So is Mr. Trump correct in thinking that if he bullies hard enough, that India will cave once again? The second, we've heard from the petroleum minister saying that actually speaking, they asked us to buy oil, but under a certain cap. Why did we accept that cap? That cap was placed by the European Union. There was no reason for India to accept that cap. All I'm saying is that if you're going to say it, have some consistency in what you say, because right now we're looking at a world where it is clear that just goodwill and great relations and all of that are not necessarily taking us over the fence when it comes to our geopolitical relationships.
Let's get reactions to all that you've said. Ambassador Dilip Sinha, I'll start with you, because Suhasini has fundamentally disagreed with you on the keeping quiet dimension. By the way, on the issue of Iran oil that Suhasini referenced, one of our members who's watching the show, Binu, says, how plausible is oil imports from Iran resuming in this situation? Will it further provoke the US? And I want you to come in on this idea that the problem is at the top. It's a personality clash of some kind, or Trump is feeling peaked. Prime Minister will have his own constraints in not having that exposure to Trump till some homework is being done. But the way Trump practices diplomacy, it's all top down. So this is an impasse that I'm not seeing a necessary way out of.
Well, I entirely agree with Suhasini on the point that officials need to do the spade work behind the screen before leaders step in to take over, because they are just the icing on the cake. The leaders stay back, diplomats and other negotiators negotiate, and then leaders meet. Now, here we are finding, especially with Trump, where the media comes in. So his first meeting with Zelensky was in public, and then he says, now we will go in and talk, which means that the press was allowed to come in, and the two were making press statements even before the talks had started. And then all the other 7 leaders of the European Union, again, they were brought in there, and they were all making statements that this is not the way to conduct diplomacy. And you find that the Ukraine peace initiative of Donald Trump is already floundering. Mm-hmm. So where does he go and hide? Now, he's, of course, a big man, therefore he can afford to keep taking U-turns, whereas India doesn't have that prerogative, because India has a very strong media, like Suhasini, for example, questioning what happened between us, that our relations went down so far. We don't know what happened. Now, the question is, Do governments, especially individuals, go around admitting such things? I don't know. It may come out later on what happened. But the point really is that if Navarro comes up and makes a statement, then what do we do? Does one of our ministers make a statement? Does the government make a statement and criticize him, condemn him? Or do we seek through whatever means, again, officials to meet and start talking and try and retrieve the situation? That is the point. We can always react to Navarro and say,
I think you're saying that you can't go tit for tat in the way that the Trump administration's officials do. I think Suhasini's point about not keeping quiet is tell the people of India. I'm assuming, Suhasini, your reference is more to the people of the country. What's going on? What happened? What did they ask for? What did we say no to? But Ambassador Sinha, is it your experience that necessarily governments share that in real time? I mean, I'm imagining there are a lot of people on tenterhooks right now because everything that you know or you've been trained in has been upended at this moment as a diplomat, I'm sure.
Yes, that's true. I mean, this never happens. You always have bureaucrats meeting first. They dash out issues. And if perhaps one or two issues are left for the leaders, that is very rarely done. There usually is an understanding that the issues would get resolved. Otherwise, the leaders do not meet. Now, you can't have leaders meeting and indulging in a slanging match with each other, as happened with poor Zelensky when he was ambushed in the White House. Now, those things spoiled relations. Now, if you notice this time when the European leaders met Bush, they were uttering the word thanks. Every second word was thanks.
Not Bush, but Trump. Not Bush, but Trump. You said
Trump,
Bush.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting no. So they were thanking Trump for all the time because remember that key word had been used in that ambush. So it is not advisable to conduct diplomacy in public like this. Especially where issues are very, very tricky. And that is precisely what I'm advising here, that we should keep quiet, look for an opportunity to restart official level talks with the Americans and try and get that back on track. On the advice, I would say that we have to also learn that this cannot be what when an affair breaks up, then you go back to your ex and try and tease your partner by saying, look, I'm having an affair with the old one. Like Trump is now loitering around flirting with Asim Munir, and we go to Wang Yi and to China. That is, we have to learn to behave like a major power ourselves. And we have issues with China. By all means, resolve those issues. But we don't have to do it simply because we have had a problem with America.
I think that's a really important point, Admiral Sinha. Come in on this China factor. It's very difficult to know how to make sense of it. You have the Deputy Chief of Army, just a few weeks ago talking about, China and Pakistan being in cahoots. He used a borrowed knife metaphor to illustrate China's very active role in the military conflict. And, now you have China professing this sort of we're in India's corner while simultaneously calling Pakistan a victim of terrorism. Wang Yi goes from here. He's now in Pakistan, being part of a so-called strategic dialogue. So I really, while I understand the need for a cautious engagement, I really don't see China as the antidote to the problems with Trump.
Oh, that I agree. We shouldn't be going with this intention because we are, have difference of opinion with the Americans. Here, in any case, the boundary talk was due. An SU meeting was scheduled. Now, whether Prime Minister Modi would have gone or not, that is anybody's guess. But I would think that since he's been invited to come for SCO, he would have gone either way, even if it was the Americans were good to you or bad to you. But the point is, the Pakistani and Chinese have very close equation for many reasons. We can have a full one day on this, and therefore to expect that just because they are friends to Pakistan, we shouldn't be talking. I think that's not quite correct. You have a border issue with China. You have to go there. There is some spade work has been done. The NSA has gone and spoken. The External Affairs Minister gone and spoken, and now it is for the Prime Ministers to go. I'm sure that there will be a lot of spade work would have been done in the MEA and in the MOD. So what they're going to speak. So I think that it is just because they are friends to Pakistan, unless we go and tell them what we are aggrieved about, their participation in Op Sindoor, it will happen every time. Because with Pakistan, China is not only interoperable, they are interchangeable. Pakistan only has American weapon systems, and not only that, the Baidu system, the satellite system, which feeds into the Chinese network, is also available to the Pakistanis. Today, China has nearly 600 satellites. The American Space Force is so worried that they are monitoring Indo-Pacific on a 24/7 basis. And therefore, Pakistan is actually a front for China. It's a proxy state. I call it Pakistan autonomous region of China. I have said this number of times. I have written. I have been trolled. I know. See, Dilip is smiling. I really firmly believe that it's all just like an autonomous region. And what happened in Op Sindoor, there's little more than what is visible, what has been said. There are many things which have been not.
But given that you think that Pakistan is virtually, one more autonomous region within China, a proxy state for China, how can engaging with China or a Russia-China axis be the? I understand it as a transactional short-term move. We're all, everybody's playing chess. But how is it a sustainable alternative to what's going on with the Americans?
Well, it is sustainable because now, instead of two-front war and facing two countries, you are actually facing one country. It is China that you're facing in every border. So therefore, you have to do your preparation accordingly. China has got this front, and China has got this northern front and an eastern front. And therefore, the armed forces have to get used to that wherever you're fighting, wherever the trouble is, you will actually be fighting the Chinese. So let's get that very clear. I've been having a little hard time to convince the army, but I feel very strongly that we are going to be one front war, number one. Secondly, unless just because Pakistan is autonomous region, not talking to China doesn't help. In fact, you have more reasons to talk. You have to tell them, well, look, you are not only indulging in this, you are indulging in helping China. We can't differentiate between you and Pakistan. Just tell them very frankly. So I think that, some frank talk has to be done with them. And I'm sure that gradually we are moving towards that. I don't know what NSA's talk has taken place, but when the talk starts between the armed forces, you will find this coming out very clearly.
Okay, so I find some of the things you've said very interesting because they actually then lead me to wonder even more what exactly is even the medium-term thought here. And I'll put that to Suhasini and Ambassador Sinha if they agree with you on the characterization of Pakistan being a front state of China and this being not a 3.5 front war that India must prepare for, but a one front war. According to you, every border you're effectively facing the Chinese. Let me before that, sir, play out Foreign Minister Jaishankar listing in Moscow what he basically called out as the hypocrisies of the Western response. Take a look.
I don't want to comment on a person, but let me comment on the subject. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil, that is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian LNG. I'm not sure, but I think that is the European Union. We are not the country which has the biggest trade surge with Russia after 2022. I think there are some countries to the south. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia. Incidentally, we also buy oil from America, and that amount has been increasing. So, quite honestly, we are very perplexed at the logic of the argument that you had referred to.
So Hasni, let's bring you in now. That's arguing on fact, and I think that's how arguments should be. But I'm not sure the Trump administration is arguing on facts, and that takes me back to, what you're saying. You're saying, tell the people of India what's actually going on. I'm saying, do you think the government knows what? Do you think are you imagining that Trump has said to President Trump has said to Prime Minister Modi, you should have given me credit, or you should have nominated me for the Nobel, or why didn't you come and meet me when you came? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't sound real. On the other hand, we simply don't know. We're all guessing.
Before I come to Operation Sindoor and what went on between India and the US there, I just want to make the point again. You hear from External Affairs Minister, and he's such a capable person with so much experience in foreign policy, saying, I'm perplexed. That's not a valid position for a country of India's stature to have. You cannot be perplexed publicly, just as we could not be perplexed by what the Chinese PLA did when it transgressed India's LAC in April 2020. You cannot end that confrontation with China without ever finding out why China did what it did. 20 soldiers were lost in Galwan. I mean, I'm amazed that we can just keep moving on with this idea that we somehow are just the victims. We don't know what's going on, but we'll continue to sally forth and proclaim the success of each one of our diplomatic endeavors. Either one has to have the humility to say, I'm sorry, I don't actually know what's going on over here, or one has to then not take credit for constantly being on the top of the world and in the best position with all the big powers of the world. So to stop that over there, to come back to your question on what happened during Operation Sindoor, I'm not sure where things actually went wrong. What my understanding is that there was obviously a very intense conversation between the US and India, beginning from May 7th itself. And possibly even before that, there were conversations where India made it clear this terror attack is something that we are going to respond to. I think once India made that clear, there were efforts by the US, possibly directly, possibly via proxy like Saudi Arabia, to say, okay, let's try and contain whatever is the fallout. In the next few days, May 7th to May 9th, we know that Mr. Rubio spoke to Mr. Jaishankar. We know that Mr. Vance spoke to Mr. Modi. And that's essentially where we don't know where the thread went off in a sense of the rails. Was there a misunderstanding? Please excuse my dog. Was there a misunderstanding when it comes to what the
I mean,
US
on a lighter note, it is a day for dogs to celebrate with the Supreme Court verdict. So we will allow your dog his voice. But sorry, didn't want to break your thread, but go ahead. Yes.
Perhaps. But at the end of the day, the fact is that by May 10th, the US certainly felt confident enough not only to be the first to announce that there'd been a ceasefire, but for Mr. Rubio to say that the two sides will actually meet at a third venue, I think he said, a neutral venue at an early date. Was there some understanding that the US got that was certainly not what we were prepared for? I don't know. But again, it's not something we understand. A few days later, Mr. Trump repeated that. In Riyadh, he said that what I'd really like is for both sides to come to the table, have dinner together, discuss their issues, and then let's all do some more trade. There are a lot of unexplained comments that have been made in the last couple of months. And I think it relates to some kind of understanding between the Indian side and the US side that was mismatched. If that is the case, and then this conversation between Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Trump on June the 17th, after the G7 summit, where it's very clear that Mr. Trump had General Munir in town, that he wanted Mr. Modi to come to Washington for a little while. I don't think, having seen what Mr. Trump did with all the others, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and as well as Azerbaijan and Armenia, as well as Congo and Rwanda, as well as what he's trying to do between Putin and Zelensky, I don't think it leaves much to the imagination that he had hoped that somehow he could get the Indian side and the Pakistani side at a table together and say, I have solved this, 80-year-old war.
Yeah.
So did he have some kind of an expectation that was in any way validated on our side, or did he just feel very disappointed? I think it's clear that he wanted that Nobel Peace recommendation. I don't see any reason why India should have given it. But that is what his expectation was. If that is what the expectation was, did India work behind the scenes in some way to say, listen, this is not something we can do, but can we say something else? Can we say, for example, that the US, yes, was in touch with us. Yes, they were able to bring Pakistan to make that crucial phone call for the ceasefire. And therefore, we are grateful to the US for whatever its role in this of trying to bring about peace is. However, we are undeterred in our course. Was it possible for it to do something? Would it have made a difference? I mean, these are all hindsight kind of questions, so I don't see a point in making them. But I don't think anyone can doubt, Barkha, that what has happened in the last few months is certainly requires a little more clarity and a little more explanation. The American public may or may not want that from their leader, but I think the Indian public should certainly demand it.
So, Ambassador Sinha, if Operation Sindoor is at the heart of it and not trade, and I think we might all agree on that this is a power game, a bruised ego, something else going on. I think all of us, even those of us who are not diplomats, know that no Indian leader of any party is going to go down and sit at a table with three parties. That's just not hardwired into how we do diplomacy. But if the meltdown is over Sindoor and mismatched expectations and mismatched understandings of credit and acknowledgement, that ship has sailed. That cannot be revisited. So now what?
Well, one, of course, Suhasini, as a member of the media, has a right to ask questions and extract answers, and I think she should continue doing that. We do need to know what happened, what transpired. I think a guess about Operation Sindoor and the expectation that Trump had, that he expected acknowledgement of his role in bringing the two sides to a ceasefire. I had mentioned earlier that I think we should have thanked Trump for this. Now, most leaders in the world have understood by now that India is extremely sensitive about the word mediation in any India-Pak matter, because we have made it a mantra in our psyche that we will not allow any mediation, which is not entirely correct. We have, in fact, in the case of the Indus Waters Treaty, we allowed ourselves to destroy the design of the Salal Dam simply because we did not want the dispute settlement mechanism of the Indus Waters Treaty to be invoked by Pakistan. It was only in 2005 that we finally accepted the neutral expert in the case of the Baghlihar dispute. That's a long, separate story. But the point is that in international affairs, you do often require mediation. But we are so sensitive to this matter, and here perhaps the media itself would have started attacking the government, saying, why did you accept mediation? Because this is our mantra, we don't accept any mediation.
Yeah.
And now the US had interfered, had played a role in the Kargil war. Of course, at that time, we had a government that was able to handle the situation and keep that allegation of mediation away. I don't know how it was played this time, but I think, as I said, we should have thanked President Trump for, as one of my colleagues said, for his facilitation in this Operation Sindoor. But he's obviously taken it very, very seriously, because he's already counting the number of ceasefires he's had: 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Half of them, of course, have gone back into firing each other. But that is Trump for you. So we have to deal with a man who's completely unstable. In fact, if you look at his most recent statement, he's raving mad, actually. Because, I mean, one side he was telling Zelensky that you should go and submit and hand over your land to Putin. And now he says you must attack Putin if you want to win the war. This is no way to run the president of the most powerful country on earth. And that is why I say that at the present moment, it is best for us. We cannot control him, but we can control ourselves. And we can do that by staying quiet and then looking for an opportunity to start official level talks and see how much of the situation we can retrieve.
So, Admiral Sinha, here's the question. Is the Quad dead for all practical purposes?
No. In fact, a few days back, Rubio has made a statement that, the Quad is very much an organization which will continue. I don't think that will happen, because the last bastion of resisting China's move into Indian Ocean is a Quad or a Malabar exercise. It may become a little less useful. It may be at the reduced intensity like it was earlier, but it will not go away. And I don't think that it will go away, for a simple reason, because China has been declared is the prime threat to US by every strategist in China, in US. So I don't think that will go away at all. There's one point I wanted to make, the how much to take President Trump and his staff seriously. The same President Trump who said that the Kashmir problem between two countries is more than 1,000 years old. So that is his knowledge of the world, number one. Secondly, how does he expect an executive head of state to be sitting with an army chief and having lunch with him on the dining table? It defies all diplomatic protocol. So I think we have to take him only that much on his value, and we should ignore him for a little while. Yes, there are problems, but sorting out will be to begin talking to them at staff level. None of the staff talks have been scuttled as yet. All staff talks are going on. In fact, the American teams are here for some other talk. So I think that it will be unwise to withdraw completely. Yes, there will be many things which will not be in the public domain. That is also true. We know there are many things not in public domain. But I guess the governments know it best. There is a policy which we have seen the government functioning in a manner, and some of it Dilip just mentioned. So I think we should respect that and follow what we have been following. We haven't gone wrong. We are walking absolutely right. If we have not been to the expectation of the media or the people, then yes, there is a need to correct that. There's no doubt about that.
All right, we leave it there. Whatever we are walking, it is even more delicate than the proverbial tightrope. I think Trump has upended many of our assumptions, our calculations, broken trust, and yes, as Suhasini said, also mismatched expectations. And I think Ambassador Sinha and Admiral remind us that you're not necessarily dealing with a rational entity at the other end, but he is the President of the United States of America. And so, as the Chinese would say, these are interesting times. Thank you so much, Suhasini Haidar, Admiral Shekhar Sinha, and Ambassador Dilip Sinha. Thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you. See you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.